right. I now convene the December 2nd, 4th, 2020 meeting of the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. Will the recording secretary please call roll?
Kirsten Barnes.
Here.
Catherine Williams Brown.
Here.
C. Michael Cooney. Marisol De La Torre Escobedo.
Here.
Anna Marie Francois. Makita Gwino Shire.
Present.
Johanna Harwick.
Here.
Alicia Hine. Terry Jackson.
Here.
Bonnie Clatt.
Present.
Kevin Kwon.
Present.
Jim Marks. Cynthia Martin. Monica Martinez. David Simmons. Tina Sloan.
Here.
Andrew Wall. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 7 members. We need one person, ex-official, to serve as the official, as a voting member.
All right. I am going to randomly choose Commissioner Kate Brown to be our voting member.
Alicia is here? I don't know.
I accept.
Here.
Hold on. Alicia is here.
Okay.
Alicia, hi.
Okay.
James, can you actually change her role to co-host, please? Yes. Her last name actually is Eerollo, that one.
All right, sorry.
Done.
All right, we have a quorum now.
Okay, thank you. Item 1A is the strategic planning working session. Amy Rising and Mary Sandy will present this item and provide an overview of how we'll carry out today's agenda. Amy, will you please begin?
Yes, thank you, Tina. And I'm going to turn it to Mary to say welcome, and then we will go back to you, Tina, for the goals and the outcome.
Yes, good morning, everyone, and thank you for being with us. We have typically done this in an off-site way. This is a different kind of off-site way than usual, so bear with us as we navigate the Zoom working session. Tina, would you like to take slide 1 and express your sense of the goals and outcomes we're seeking today? And could you advance the slide? Thank you.
And just before you start, excuse me, James, we need to go on to full slide, please. Back to you, Tina.
Okay, thank you. Yes, this is our opportunity, although I'm not seeing the slide anymore. Is anybody else seeing the slide?
No, it went away for a second.
Okay, well, that's
I'm moving it back to so that you can have it in full mode. Sorry about that.
That's no problem. Thank you, James. All right, perfect. So today we are going to do something that we have asked our preparation programs to do for a long time, and that is to look at data and analyze data collaboratively in the company of the people who are part of our organization, that is our commissioners and our staff, and to make sense of the data in order to plan our next steps in our strategic plan. So towards that end, our goal today is going to be to increase our familiarity with the plan itself and the statute mandate so that we know what we're doing in order to be able to create the directions that we want to go in with the new plan. We're going to have time for us to review the stakeholder feedback that staff had gathered some weeks ago and have done a good analysis of in terms of making it digestible for our investigation. We're going to reflect and weigh on that feedback against our current goals. And then we are going to begin developing goal areas for 2021. This is just the beginning of our work. And this is a brainstorm today and an opportunity to just put ideas out on the table. And that, I think, is the really important thing to remember. All right, back to you, Mary.
I think it's back to you, Amy. Please advance the slide.
Good morning, everyone. I want to take a second here and go over our agenda for today. We have started with some welcome and introductions, and we will continue to do that. We will have participants coming in and out during the day. We just heard about our goals and outcomes. Thank you, Tina. And we're going to move on and then take a quick look at some norms we'd like to establish for today's session and talk a little bit about roles that each of us in our different categories will play. We'll talk about the materials that we'll be using today. And we'll start off with a review of item 1A, strategic planning working session, and revisit our mission, vision, values, and goals. We'll then move into a whole group discussion that Mary and I will facilitate, and we will begin our work by looking at the survey questions 3 and 4. We will look at some data charts, and we will also look at some written summaries, and we will have a full group discussion about these 2 questions and the feedback that our stakeholders sent to us. We will then move into small breakout groups. We will have 3 breakout groups, and in these groups, we will then review the data for questions 5 and 6 and look at those data charts and have a discussion. The outcome of those small group discussions will all of us coming back into the main room to have a full group sharing of what we discovered, our highlights from our discussion. We will then take a lunch break for 30 minutes, and we will provide some entertainment from the Monterey Bay on your screen. Please remember not to leave the Zoom call, but to leave it running when you take your lunch break. Well, after lunch, we'll come back into our small groups that will be the same groups that we were in the morning session. And this time we'll look at questions 7 and 8 and the data and have a discussion about that. Again, come back into the main room and have a whole group debrief and capture the highlights from those discussions. And then we'll give a little bit of a preview about what's coming on Friday. This is the beginning of our conversation with you, and we will continue it on Friday and then further into the new year. So just think of today as that beginning discussion about this data. And then finally, we will have an opportunity for public comment. Next slide, please. So we just want to start with some quick introductions. I am Amy Rising, Director of Performance Assessment Policy and Development for the Commission, and I'm joined by Mary, who we all know and love. We will have technical assistance offered to us by Haiju and Rhonda Brown, and their emails are there. Please, if you have any issues today with your technology, with your internet, with anything at all, do get in touch and let us know, and we will be there to help you. Our producer today will be James Webb, and he will be helping us get in and out of our breakout rooms and also handle any questions you may have about the Zoom session itself, and there is his email address. We will have lead facilitators in our breakout groups. They will be led by Terry Clark from PSD, Cheryl Hickey from PSD, and myself. Our recorders today will be Phyllis Jacobson, PSD, Kara Mendoza, PSD, and Angel Lopez, who is from our certification unit. And then, of course, welcome to all of you commissioners and welcome to the members of the public. Next slide, please. We have a few norms that we would like to pause for a second. The first thing we do want you all to know is that this is a public session and this meeting is being recorded. We did mute microphones upon arrival, and we will not be using the chat function today. We will be actually talking to each other. Please do avoid multitasking during the webinar so that we can make sure that you hear all the information and you can engage in the discussions. It is helpful to adjust your speaker view to gallery view for these types of presentations so you can see the person who is presenting. Honor time for all participants by moderating your own participation. appreciate all perspectives shared during brainstorming discussions. For technical assistance, as I mentioned, please reach out to Haju and Rhonda. Finally, for commissioners and commission staff, please enable your video cameras during our small group discussions so we can see each other and talk together. And then finally, members of the public, you do need to have your cameras turned off. Next slide. We wanted to just briefly touch on roles. Commissioners, please participate in conversations, ask questions, and one of you from each of the breakout sessions will hopefully agree to report for your group. The lead facilitator will lead the small group conversations. The recorder will take notes on a OneDrive document that we will all be able to see, and we can use the OneDrive document for the presentations of highlights. Commission staff is joining us beyond the leads and the recorders. And so we have additional commission staff experts from across the agency, and they will be with us in our breakout rooms to participate in conversations and answer any questions that come up based on our analysis of the data. And then finally, members of the public, please observe and join us. And then you will have an opportunity for comment at the end of the day, which is right around 2:50. We will be using materials today. Hopefully all of you received them ahead of time and had a chance to print them out, or perhaps you have a second computer screen that you can put them up on, but we will be referring to these materials. So the first is the actual item 1A, strategic planning working session. The second is the insert that was provided yesterday. So the item 1A insert, strategic planning working session agenda and summary findings. This is the main document that we will be using today, and the one that hopefully you have either a printed copy or a screen to put it up on. And then finally, the actual raw data itself is provided to you in an Excel spreadsheet. It is provided to you through a link that is in item 1A. And if there's time or you have interest, you can go in, and certainly if you don't have time today, you can do that as we move forward. Next slide. All right, so this brings us into actually talking about item 1A, our strategic planning working session item. And I'm going to turn it back to Mary at this time, who's going to take us through some key concepts and ideas that are already existing in our current strategic plan. Mary?
Thank you. So the strategic plan that currently sits before the Commission was adopted in 2014. And it's been a fairly durable document for a number of reasons for us for the last 6 years. In January, when we discussed our priorities for the year, we included updating that plan. We surveyed our stakeholders in the spring, received data back from them this summer. Staff has been in analysis of these data and preparing these findings for this meeting through the fall. And at this meeting, we are going to model project-based learning at its best by digging into that stakeholder feedback primarily, not we're not making decisions in today's session, but we are using this material to help really clarify what's our mandate, what's outside our mandate, and how is the field receiving us. We will take the discussion from this day, and on Friday we'll be following up with some of this as well, to put together an item for your first meeting of the new year. And we may, in fact, the chair and I have talked about using next year for study sessions and deeper learning as a body. So we may actually come to adopt a final strategic plan at the end of the year, but that's fluid and will depend very much on all of you. Next slide, please. So I'm going to just do a quick breeze through some things that are background for us that may help us think about the work as the material as we go through it. Your agenda item includes links to our education code and where our mandate is specified, but it can be summed up at a very high level in 3 buckets of work. First is we're required to issue credentials and license California educators. Secondly, we're required to accredit preparation programs and based on standards that we set as a standards board. And third, we monitor and address educator misconduct. There's a great deal of work around that, from reporting to a whole host of procedures that we engage in, but really this is what the legislature has mandated for us to do. Next slide. So within that broad set of activities, or those 3 specific sets of activities, We've tied the current vision and mission statements directly to that work. So our current vision statement adopted by the Commission in 2014 is that all of California's students, preschool through grade 12, are inspired and prepared to achieve their highest potential by well-prepared and exceptionally qualified educators. And the mission statement that moves that vision forward is to ensure integrity, relevance, and high quality in the preparation, certification, and discipline of the educators who serve all of California's diverse students. Next slide. We also, in this plan in 2014, adopted a set of values that are like the spice and the seasoning that flavor our work. First, we recognize and promote excellence in the preparation and practice of California's education workforce. Second, we value and promote equity, quality, inclusiveness, and diversity in standards, programs, practices, people, and the workplace. Third, we are dedicated and committed to the education and welfare of California's diverse students. Fourth, we value the voices, ideas, and understanding of educators, parents, students, our partners, stakeholders, and employees. And finally, we embrace the spirit of innovation that enables us to transform our vision into reality. Next slide, please. So we've organized our strategic plan, as you well know, because we revisit this a lot, into 4 broad goal areas that match and follow our mandate from the legislature. Goal 1 is about educator quality. Goal 2 is about program quality and accountability. Goal 3 is about communication and engagement. Goal 4 is about operational effectiveness. And within these 4 goals, we have identified 5 or 6 specific activity objectives, if you will, that organize our work. And then every January or February, first meeting of every year, we set priorities with the Commission. We identify priorities, milestones we intend to meet that will advance this strategic plan, or new initiatives we plan to launch that also serve to advance this plan. Now, this is just an overview of the current strategic plan, not with an intent to bind you to it. You are the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. This is your plan. But we thought it would be important for you to understand how this plan is structured to move your work forward, to address your mandate from the legislature, and all of it, from the mission, vision, values, goals, and specific objectives, is up for our review and examination. What we're going to do today is look at what our stakeholders think. That's what today's session is about. Next slide, please. So, and I think, as I already said, we will use the discussions from this meeting to shape the next conversation in February. We may make enough progress in this set of conversations that we have some ideas about how to begin framing or updating the existing plan, but that's where we will go next after this meeting. And I think it's back to you, Amy.
Yes, thank you, Mary. So now what we're going to do is go ahead, take a deep breath, and move into actually looking at our stakeholder data. And Mary and I are going to co-facilitate this next section. We are going to look at 2 specific questions, question 3 and question 4, and we're going to model how the rest of the day, when we do move into our small groups, how the process of looking at this summarized data is going to flow, so that we can move through quite a bit of data that we received from the stakeholder survey, from that wonderful opportunity that our stakeholders took to take the time for us to share with us their thinking. So we have a lot to cover, and we're going to model a process for how we're going to move through this and then make some sense from it together as we enter these very beginning conversations. So next slide, please. All right, we want to let you know that the survey had multiple questions. Today, we are going to focus on 7 of those questions. Questions 1 and 2 were primarily about who are you? And so we have synthesized that data around organizations and educator preparation programs. So we didn't feel that those 2 questions needed to be added. So we are beginning with question 3. what is the purpose or mission of the commission? So Mary just shared with you the current one. What we're going to do is look at the data that stakeholders sent to us about what their perspective is and what the purpose and mission should be. Please go back to the slide. Thank you. The second question we're going to look at today is question 4, and that is, what is the commission doing well? What services or support is the commission providing that should be continued? So these 2 questions, Mary and I will co-facilitate. Then questions 5 and 6, we will do in breakout groups, in small groups, and have discussion, and then 7 and 8. So 5 looks at, what would you like to see the commission start doing? What is the agency not providing that would in fact be helpful to the field? And together then, question 6, what should the commission stop doing? What is the agency doing that is no longer relevant or is no longer helpful to stakeholders? So 5 and 6 will be taken up together. What should we start doing? What should we stop doing? We'll have a lunch break. Questions 7 and 8, what areas of policy, if any, need to be updated? And what new policy areas, if any, should be taken up by the commission? Finally, question 9, how satisfied are you with the commission's effectiveness, is a question that we will take up together on Friday. Next slide, please. So we wanted to share with you how it is that the commission staff came to developing the document that you were sent in the insert, which provides the high-level summaries of the actual raw data and the data tables themselves and charts. So we wanted to start with that overview first so that you understand the steps that we took. So 82 entities responded to the stakeholder survey. 21 of those were organizations and 61 were individual institutions or educator preparation programs. As staff, we reviewed all responses received and identified from that data then 15 categories of commission work that were most referenced across questions 4 through 8. So as we read through that raw data, we began to develop our coding scheme, and that turned into 15 categories. Question 3 that we're going to start with is a little bit different than 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Question 3 focuses on the broader mission of the commission, and responses are organized around slightly different categories than question 4 to 8. So we wanted to point that out so nobody got confused. And we will clearly talk about that in a minute when we get to question 3. So once we had all the raw data and we looked at that data and we came up with our 15 categories, we then coded those responses and determined the frequency of reference. How many times was an idea shared with us, for example? Once we had that frequency count, we then summarized stakeholder responses across the 15 categories and organized them around the commission's then 4 broad goals. So if you think about 4 buckets, inside of each of the buckets, you'll see the 15 categories as they plugged into each of those buckets. Responses that didn't fit into any of these broad goals were captured under a 5th category because often responses that were shared with us crossed categories. And so we created a multi-categorical feedback bucket, if you will. So this is these are the steps we took, and we just wanted to share with you how it is that we got to the document that we're going to be using today and the charts that we're going to be using today. So let's continue. These are our 15 categories that come directly from the frequency counts of the raw data. So we had stakeholder comments about recruitment and grants. We had comments about testing, performance assessments, educator misconduct, educator prep, accreditation, communication, stakeholder engagement. We had comments that came to us that referenced credentialing and technology, funding, research, data, diversity, equity, and inclusion, early childhood, and finally, we had a general category for ideas that came to us that were beyond these, that are captured in that general category. Next slide, please. So this brings us into our actual work together, and we're going to start with you by modeling the process. If you have in front of you, I would like to ask you to take a moment and just pull out your agenda insert. Hopefully you have a copy. If you're like me, you have it on paper because I like to read things on paper, or maybe you have another screen and you can pull that up. So I'll just pause for a second so we can all be together. I just want to point out where you're going to see this in the document, the information that we're going to talk about. So if you have that document up, you can turn to pages 4. We will start our analysis on page 4 and look at information between pages 4 and 8. But we will also provide it to you on the screen. So again, just pausing for a second for everyone to get their material. Do let us know if you need help getting to this document. So I'm going to now go over what we're going to be thinking about as we read through and look at this data together. So we're going to start by doing a review of the charts for you in 1 second here. We're going to go to the next slide and you'll see the pie chart and then some more pie charts and one bar chart. Please go back to the slide before. And then once we do that, we will have you take a few minutes to actually read the written summaries, and you can find those on page 7 and 8 in your document. They're fairly brief. They're high-level summaries that come to us from the staff analysis that I just explained. And then we're going to come together and have a whole group discussion. And we have 2 particular questions we'd like you to be thinking about as you look at this data. How do stakeholder responses align or not with the current purpose or mission of the commission? So Mary gave us the current mission. How did these comments from our high-level data, how do they align with the current mission? Second question, what new ideas, if any, have been shared for the purpose and mission of the commission? So how does it align? And what do you see in the data that's new? And then we will always end each of our discussions with 2 important step back questions. The first is, what insights are we gaining by looking at this data? What is the data telling us? And then what additional questions might we have based on the data we have just seen and discussed? When we come back together in a minute to talk about our thinking about question 3, we will record your thoughts in a OneDrive document. So next slide, let's go ahead and jump into our first data chart here for you. It's a pie chart. And again, question 3 is looking at stakeholders' perceptions of the CTC's role and mission. Now, what you see in front of you is that we had 81 total responses. That's our N. And then you can see quite quickly that the pie chart shows us that there were 3, almost 4 major areas. The largest area of response about what our mission is was in relation to program quality. The commission should ensure program quality. 46% of the responses reflected that category, followed by ensuring educator quality. So program quality, educator quality, developing standards, and certification follow. So actually, let's see. So ensuring program quality, ensuring educator quality, developing certification is actually the 3rd one in yellow. And then blue is program guidance and technical assistance. So program quality, educator quality, developing standards, program guidance, and technical assistance, etc. So I'll give you a second to just take a look there.
Amy, may I ask a question?
Please.
Just so that I make sure I understand, all of these questions were completely open-ended, no prompts, no drop-down menus that they were supposed to select what they thought the purpose or mission was. These were all narrative responses that then you categorized.
That is correct.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Amy, I have another question as well. The 2 guiding questions for us to use when looking at this data, I can't find it in the agenda. Is it insert? Are they there?
We can go back to the slide. The questions are in the facilitators guide, Tina.
And I don't know. The
And they're on the slide deck. So if we can go back. 1 slide, please. Here are the 2 questions. So how is this data we're seeing aligning with the current mission? And if there are new ideas appearing? So current mission alignment, new ideas.
Thank you.
So let's go back to our first pie chart. And again, the distribution is squarely around program quality, educator quality, and certification comes up at 28%.
So,
With
and you'll notice here,
developing standards.
can I jump in for a quick
Please,
second?
Mary.
So this does align with the mission and the statutory mandate, ensuring program quality through accreditation. It's clearly in our mandate, ensuring educator quality through certification of readiness to be licensed fits squarely in what the legislature expects of us. You see educator discipline is on the list as well, though we did not get a lot of response from this community of respondents on educator discipline. But it's there. And then there are flavors around it. This notion that we adhere to laws and regulations, well, of course we do. That we focus on serving all students, that's straight into our values. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, also straight into our values adopted in the current plan. There is an expectation that we exercise leadership to advance the profession of teaching, which is a different slice, maybe not something we've articulated for ourselves before, but something the field was interested in. Collaborating with stakeholders, big idea. That's going to be a big and continuing theme, and that is also within the legislative codes that move us forward. Now, Amy, I am looking at the clock and I see 10 minutes till we want to have a hard stop. So I'm going to suggest that we roll through this a little bit faster, maybe.
Yeah.
Because what we're doing here is modeling for you what you're going to find and what you're going to do in your smaller groups. So.
Thank you. So let's move on to the second slide. And what you're going to see here are two pie charts next to each other that show you the breakdown between how organizations responded to this question and how educator preparation programs, that's what EPP stands for, how the 61 responses there responded. So again, we'll just pause for a second. So you can see program quality and educator quality still the majority of the responses, along with developing standards. But
I'd like to
you can see there are differences between organizations and our EPPs. Mary.
Quickly, I just wanted to point out that what the percentages mean. So in the organizational responses, 80% of the organizations that responded highlighted program quality as a key mission for us. 75% of them said ensuring educator quality. So that's what the percentages relate to. And on the EPP side, a third, 34% of the educator preparation programs said ensure program quality, and 31%, another third, said educator quality. So each of these charts reflect a percentage of that type of population that responded to us.
Mary, may I just ask one more question? And this may be in here and I just haven't seen it, but could you just tell me a little bit more about who the organizations were? I understand about the EPPs, but what the range of organizations was that responded, since there are distinctions in what their responses were?
Absolutely. I think we may have that in our, not sure if we do have it in our.
The appendix to the main item has that list of all organizations.
There we
The
go.
first item that was posted.
Yes, it does someplace, but I'm not finding it at the moment. So in terms of the organizations, all of the 4 higher education system offices, so we heard from the University of California President's Office, the CSU Chancellor's Office, the community colleges, and the AICCU, Association of Independent Colleges. We heard from the California Teachers Association, from the County Superintendents Association. We heard from the California Council on Teacher Education. We heard from the Parent Organization Network. So it's the broad swath of groups that attend to our work and are involved in developing our work. And then the individual institutions, 61 of them were many of the California State Universities, many of the University of California campuses where they offer ed prep, and many of the community, independent colleges and universities. We also heard from several county office of education that offer ed prep. We heard from the Charter Schools Association as well, and a couple of charter schools that we have accredited. So it's a broad swath. It's not it's not 100%. We put the survey out. This is the response we got. But part of the reason we are keeping this process open and a lot of public comment and involvement is expected, because we want to hear from any stakeholder that has an interest in this work for us.
Thanks.
So let's, shall we move on to the next slide, Amy?
Yes, please. Let's move to the next slide. Now, this is a slightly different type of chart, bar chart. And what this does is just puts the organization responses next to the educator preparation programs so that you can see how they responded differently across these categories. So again, I'll pause for a second and let you take a peek. Again, remember our blue bars represent 20 organizations. Our educator preparation programs represent 61 responses.
And these bar charts are driven by percentages of those populations, not the number. So can we keep moving?
Yes, let's keep going. So now we want to come back to our questions, Tina. These are our questions. So now we're going to open it to the floor for some discussion. And so anyone who is willing to jump in here, we will unmute you and let you speak. So let's take our first question real quick. Any thoughts here on how the stakeholder responses align or do not align with the current purpose or mission of the commission? Mary spoke a little bit about the alignment that she was noticing to the 4 main goals. Anyone have a thought to add?
I did think it was interesting what has already been brought up about the idea of leadership, of the commission really serving as a leader. And, you know, maybe that's implied in what our current mission is, but I think that's an interesting layering on that to think about if there was a way for our mission to emphasize the leadership role we expect of ourselves within the field.
Great, thank you. Anyone else want to add to that? Or shall we move on to new ideas? Any additional ideas there?
Amy, I would just add that I think it's positive that there's strong alignment between the organizations and the EPPs regarding the current mission. I think that needs to be noted.
Did I see?
Thank you,
Bonnie
Marquita.
Did Bonnie raise her hand?
Yes, thank you. And it was interesting to me to see that the educator discipline, and maybe that's a good thing, that it's not, you know, in one of the highest responses. But when I think about the amount of resources and time that the commission does need to use to address that issue, it's obviously a very important issue. And so it's interesting to see that it didn't come up as much as some of the others. And I'm not really sure the answer to that. I mean, I know we report out at each meeting the educator conduct and the Division of Professional Practices reports out. So I'm not sure how much we need to make that more central in people's minds. Maybe we don't, but it is interesting to see that that was a small percentage.
I noticed that as well. I wanted to say that I think that the 3 mandates that we have from the legislature, we have several things that people are interested in that are more reflected in our mission, vision, and values than our 3 mandates. And I'm just wondering, in terms of communication, I'm thinking the same thing that Bonnie does. When we look at the resources that are used on the 3 legislative mandates, do we have enough resources even to meet our mission, vision, and values? And then secondly, of all the things that were brought up, I would agree that leadership is one that hasn't really been addressed in either place, either the MVV or the mandate.
Thank you. So just to wrap this one up, and I know we're moving quickly, we will come back and have more time to talk as we go forward in time, certainly Friday and beyond. But what insights, just gut insights, maybe did you grab from looking at this data, and what additional questions, maybe one question we could take before we move on and look at 4 together, do you now have in relation to our mission? Insights, anyone?
I thought it was interesting that a few of the things that Mary referred to as going straight towards our values, like DEI, focusing on serving all students and so on, came up as the number one choice that a significant number of the respondents had as our purpose. Whereas, you might expect that the response would be one of those sort of major programmatic categories that we cover. So I just thought that was interesting, because all of the people who are responding to this are incredibly well-informed and thoughtful. And so to me, that makes me think if they chose to highlight that as the purpose, they were trying to send us a message about that's what they want us to be doing. And so I think that is reflective of what we have as our vision now, but certainly helpful for illuminating the path that we want to pursue. Because it seems to me like that's a pretty conscientious choice of the responders, that they were going to select, something that was not just a major programmatic area.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. Any questions?
I just want to,
Tina.
Thanks. Clarify the data and just make sure we're understanding what this data is, because Johanna, when you were saying it's interesting they chose that as the number one thing. This data is all open-ended, so respondents wrote out a number of things that they could write out any number of things about what our mission is. And then when staff went and coded that text, then they pulled out, the text that corresponded to these similar codes. So what this is saying is that a majority of people mentioned those big three categories or big four categories. And then in their responses, they also mentioned some of these other pieces. Just want to make sure we understand it.
Okay, that's helpful for my understanding. I think I would still hold my point there, but that's helpful for my understanding of how these were, how this was categorized.
Agreed. And then I'm just going to note that the link to the raw data on my agenda is incorrect. It's not going to the right place.
For me, I just downloaded it. It actually downloads the Excel document to your computer at the bottom of your browser screen.
Okay.
Well, we will figure that out. The technical, we'll make sure that you have access.
Thank you, Terry. So what pulls up is something different, but then it downloads. So I didn't see the download part, if you all are looking for that.
So I just also want to point out the written summaries are on page 7 and 8, and hopefully maybe you turn there and take a quick look at how the data is organized into the goal buckets of educator quality, program quality and accountability, communication, operational effectiveness, and then multi-categorical. And that is found on the bottom of page 7, the top of page 8.
So Amy, I see Marquita has her hand up.
Marquita.
Thank you, Mary and Amy. I want to just stay with this discussion we're having right now, because I'm actually surprised that DEI didn't come out to be a more prominent response. And I just want to make sure I'm understanding the data. And I would ask the staff just to help the commission. I understand the 3 or 4 big buckets of responses, and those align with the mission. But it seems like DEI would have been more prominent this past year. And at least my reading, it doesn't appear to be.
Well, I believe you're going to see more of it as we go through the questions. It does become more prominent in some of the other questions. So for instance, when you get into the breakout sessions, what should we start doing? I think you'll see more DEI mentioned there in questions 7 and 8, which are about what new policy or what updates to policy. You'll see more DEI referenced there. But this question was, what, in your own words, what do you think the mission of the Commission on Teacher Credentialing is? And so we got fairly broad feedback. And we're using this as an example to just get the conversation started. This is like walking you through a kitchen where you can smell the chocolate chip cookies, but we don't let you sit down with a glass of milk, okay? So you may feel a little like, boy, I'd like to dig in on this, but we didn't schedule time for you to really dig in on this one. This is our modeling. Right. And we have moved to the place in our schedule where if we're going to give you the full hour of breakout, we are 3 minutes into that hour. So Amy, I wonder if we should just quickly go over the next, just the data tables on slide 4, just so you get a taste of what is it that the field said the commission is doing well.
Yes. So next slide, please, James.
We're not going to spend any time in discussion of that. We're offering it for you now, knowing that we've got time scheduled on Friday to revisit all of this. Today's work session is to get you familiar with this so that you've got the tools and the guide to dig in, and we can have a richer, perhaps, conversation on Friday and then in future meetings. So,
yes.
Amy, do you want me to just quickly run through these?
If you sure, go right ahead.
So what is the commission doing well? You see that 62% of respondents altogether said communicating. And by communication, we mean the ways in which the commission staff and commission reach out to the field and let them know what's happening on any number of topics. That can include our office hours, our webinars, the various things we're doing to communicate with the field. The second biggest category is stakeholder engagement. So half of this pie chart is about how we're engaging with the field, highly valued by the field. Accreditation is the next big category, and with 61 institutions of higher education responding, we do a lot of work with them in accreditation. So it's good to see that we've got some high-level response there, that's valued and valuable work. What we do in preparation through standards, through updating programs by updating our standards, that's also highly valued. The credentialing work we do, we heard from our CCAC community, that's the Credential Analysts of California, and from CISESA, a number of respondents were really into how we recommend credentials for credentials and how that whole process works. So that's another item that was valued by our stakeholders. And it moves down to, you can see the slivers getting smaller, but all of these things were mentioned by some number of stakeholders as valued. Next slide. As you look at the slide on the left, tells you how the organizations were responding and what they valued. 62% of them listed communication. 61% of the educator preparation programs also mentioned communication. The second big ticket item for organizations was stakeholder engagement. That was on the list for EPPs, and please bear with me if I go to acronyms, it's just going to save time if I do. The next big ticket item for EPPs was accreditation, because that's really where they do their work with us. So you can see there's some similarities and differences across these two groups. These data tables are in the agenda insert, the summary document that you have at your hand, so you can spend more time with this off schedule, and we'll come back to it as you'd like us to. Next slide. And here is the comparison slide that shows across the board kind of how the different organizations and EPPs compared on topics. So communication's a big theme, and it runs throughout these questions. And you will see a great deal more of it as you get into your work groups. So I want to respect you, commissioners, and invite, if there are any particular questions or desire
the next slide
or anything, we can do that, but we're not going to spend time debriefing this together right now, because I'd like to get you into groups, if you're okay with that. Is there anything anyone would like to bring up before Amy takes us to that part of the day? Okay, I don't see any hands, so let's move on, Amy, to the organization, the breakout group.
So just quickly, we are going to move into breakout rooms, and we wanted to just stress a few key points. So we will be put into our breakout rooms by James, our producer. And this morning, we're going to look at Q5 and Q6 in much more depth than we were able to visit 3 and 4 at this point in time. Then we will be facilitating the group discussion, following the same pattern we just went through. A couple of questions to help frame the discussion, and then our 2 key questions of insights and additional questions that are coming up for you. The materials, we just want to point out, we do want you to be using the agenda insert. That's where you're going to see the data and have the written summary responses. And then finally, we'll come back to the main room as a whole group and debrief on questions 5 and 6. Next slide, please. Again, just our roles. Just remember, we're all going to engage, talk with each other, and have a great time. Next slide, please. These are the breakout rooms that we're going to be placing you in. Please click on the button to join it when it comes up on your screen. If you get lost in the process, let us know through the email and we will get you where you need to go. So group 1, 2, and 3, you can find your names there. And then members of the public with us today, we will be randomly assigning you to breakout rooms.
So Amy,
James,
quick question.
Go ahead.
Before
Mary.
you go, Amy, if people want to switch rooms, is that possible for James to facilitate?
For members of the public, yes.
Yeah.
That is correct.
Yes, members of the public can come back to the main room and then indicate another room in which they'd like to go. And so we will be able to reassign them as needed.
What's our time frame?
We have 1 hour together in the small group, and we will cover question 5 in the first 30 minutes or so and question 6 in the second.
Madam Chair, anything you'd like to say before we break?
Yes, I would like to say that the reason we are in these small groups and we've thought strategically about who's in them because we know the value of diversity of thought and diversity of expertise and experiences that everybody is bringing to bear on these questions. So it is critical, I think, to remember that we each have a role in digging into this data and brainstorming together. That includes staff and commissioners. You all bring expertise to the table that we need. And our main thing to think about is, bear in mind the kinds of potential priorities that we might consider for next year. And that's what we're going to revisit again on Friday, as Amy and Mary have said. Finally, those first questions were a rush to go through, but there was so much data here that Amy, Mary, and I felt like questions 5 and 6 together and questions 7 and 8 together were the real meat of the important, interesting comments that could help us shape our work. And that's why we wanted to spend the time digging in on those.
Madam Chair, before you're done, as we go into the breakout sessions, you need to recess the general session?
Right.
You were on that? Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
All right. If nothing further, I will now recess the general session so that commissioners, staff, and members of the public can participate in breakout sessions.
I am now going to put,
Go ahead, James.
No, I was just going to say, Amy, I'm ready to put everyone into their breakout rooms, and there will be a timer in the breakout room, and I will also let everyone know about time countdowns as well.
Thank you very much, James. All right, everyone, we will see you in the breakout rooms. Remember to click on the join button, and you will be moved into the breakout room for discussion.
And here we go.
Here we go. You can all see the blue button that says join. Just go ahead and click and you will be sent into your room. Let us know if you need help. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for being timely.
When the room closes, you don't have a lot of choice.
This is true. This is true. But you didn't have to tell them that, Terry. Now they know the secret. All right, so we are going to do a summary here of our first round of discussions on questions 5 and 6. We have a process, of course, to help organize our thinking and sharing. We are now back in the main room, so welcome back. And each group will have 5 minutes. So these are very high-level highlights. Of course, all of you have seen that we've been gathering all of your thinking in our OneDrive document. And we will pull that document up for you as you present. We will begin with group 1. And please, group 1 reporter, give us some highlights from 5 and 6. And then we will pause and move to groups 2 and then 3. And each group who is following a preceding group, if you would add to what we've heard, add new thinking to what we've heard, something in your group that hasn't come up yet in the full discussion, that would be awesome. So let's go ahead and start. So I'm going to turn it to Cheryl Hickey, who's a lead facilitator for Group 1. Cheryl, you want to introduce your reporter, and we'll get started.
Okay, Commissioner Jackson is going to be our reporting out person.
Great. And just before you start, Commissioner Jackson, I'm going to ask also James to keep his eye on the time and give us the high sign when we get to 5 minutes. Thank you so much, and let's start.
Okay, so for question number 5, I'll start there, and just some insights as we dove into the data and everything. We started talking about the area of DEI and recruitments as well as barriers. We noticed those comments throughout the data. Also, communications came up as an area to look at, and the comments were made that was not a surprise, because constantly looking at communications and how it is, especially like the internal websites, and making sure the communications are user friendly, especially for candidates that are going through the various programs. Also, data came up as one of the highlights. Collecting data, we do a really good job of collecting data, but then how do we use it more, and how do we communicate what the data means and usefulness with the field, and how the field can really utilize what data has been collected by the commission. And then a timely kind of observation about integrating digital learning and teaching standards, especially with the months that we've had with distance learning and all of that. Mm-hmm. And then we have I believe,
Terry, Commissioner Jackson, can I interrupt you for just one moment? I am not sure, Madam Chair, did you reconvene general session?
Oh,
I'm so sorry. We need to do that.
My apologies, and I'm sitting here looking at the script.
No worries.
I now reconvene the general session.
Thank you.
Okay.
Please continue.
And then, yes, and then just to additional questions. What can the commission do to be a leader in the area of diversity and inclusion and all of that? And how do we use data to show when candidates are ready? And how can data help with decision making? And also in terms of communications, what can we do to the site to be more user friendly and user oriented?
Thank you so much. I think you might have another few seconds. You want to add anything else, or your team members?
Yeah, any team members that want to add anything that think that I should have highlighted that I didn't. So
just give it a second. Okay, sounds like you did had a great discussion. Thank you so much, Commissioner Jackson, for sharing your thoughts from your group. And let's move on to Group 2. We're going to start with Alicia. She's going to take question 5, and then Corey will follow with question 6. So Alicia, if you would just add to the thinking, please.
All right. So we pulled out recruitment efforts under the lens of diversity and inclusion. So that was one. Revisiting testing. Are our tests working the way that we want to get the results that we aimed for? Communication was also a big one. Creativity and credentialing. And then really rethinking how we are doing things, and are we, especially now in this time where we're all home and we're having to do things differently, are our practices the best practices, or is now a good time to step back and question why we're doing what we're doing? We talked about, is there a way to increase survey responses? It would be great to have more people obviously responding to our surveys, but we get what we get and we don't throw a fit. Let's see, I think.
Can you scroll down a little, James, please?
This is like so hard to follow that. Oh, this was another thing that came up. Why do we not have any questions around teacher misconduct? Is it because the field is super happy with the way that we handle teacher misconduct, or does the field not understand what we do and what that process looks like for teacher misconduct. And is there a way that we can seek student voices in this process to get more? I mean, luckily we have Corey on our, on the commission, but she's one voice for a lot of students. So is there a way to reach out when we're doing these surveys, field surveys, and include student candidates in that?
Great, thank you. Anything else you want to add, or should we turn it to Corey for question 6?
I think we can move on.
All right, thank you, Alicia. Corey, few highlights from question 6.
Yes. So for question 6, we're on. Okay, good.
Just hang on. Try not to get don't feel like you're on a roller coaster. Just close your eyes. Okay, there we go.
Okay, so for question 6, there was talks about technology, about how there may be some mandates in place where it can limit the abilities of what we can do, so such as wet signatures and sending in things by paper, but also there's other things that the commission may be able to do to make things a little bit more accessible. We spoke about accreditation review being based on people getting credentials and what is the best interest. We also talked about barriers of testing and how even though there's mandates that they should be reevaluated, especially if we want to have a DEI lens over the commission. And yeah, is that all that we have for number 2? Okay.
Yes, so we talked a lot about the testing and then collaboration.
Yes, and does anyone else have anything they want to add onto that?
From our group?
Yes, from our group.
Yeah. All right, we're good. We're going to move ahead then. Thank you, Corey, and thank you, Alicia, to group 3, and I'll turn to Terry to introduce the reporter.
Yes, group 3 is going to have Marisol do our reporting for our morning session, and there's our notes that Phyllis took. So Marisol.
Yes, okay. Let's see here. So I don't want to repeat, I want to follow our protocol here, but we also highlighted very similar things regarding communication. Let's see here. One thing I do, actually, if you can scroll back up, I'm going back and forth between the highlights and the questions. One of the things that we did emphasize in terms of credentialing is, should the commission be looking more closely at 4-year integrated programs and how they are doing? And this ties also into actively recruiting for diversity, equity and inclusion and so forth. And let's see, back to DEI and recruiting also, just in terms of what is in our programs, from anti-racist teaching, social justice and more. And also the role that the CTC needs to play in promoting the diversity in our teaching workforce. If you can scroll down, please. We emphasize the communication that the other 2 groups did, just in terms of continuing our work and enhancing our work and streamlining that. Let's see. Understanding the avenues for becoming a teacher, that was similar to the 2 groups as well. And then some questions that we had as well, just in terms of micro-credentials and how that can be a way, just in terms of providing a shorter route to being able to become employed, especially for those credentials that we need more of, specifically in special education. And how could this be a way to support the career ladder? And then also, just in terms of incorporating EC in the credentialing system, and we want to note that this data was collected prior to these webinars and so forth. And one other point that I want to mention as well that was brought up by Aida Rodriguez, just in terms of This was in the raw data, comment 59, the relationship between the CTC and the state board. That what is the divide between and why aren't they more partners, and so forth, just in terms of what that relationship looks like in terms of us working together. And yeah, I think that is it, unless any other group member has something to add.
All right. Anyone want to add? Going once, going twice.
I would just add that we also had a conversation around the relationship of induction in terms of teacher mentoring. That a way to retain people, beginners into the field would be to have a more robust teacher mentoring program. And that would be for all areas, you know.
Across the board,
School,
okay.
K-12, special ed.
Okay, great. Thank you for highlighting that important idea, induction, especially long history in California. All right, everyone, great job. So the process we went through this morning for 5 and 6 will repeat for 7 and 8. We are slightly off our agenda, but not terribly. So what we, with your permission, are going to do is we're going to move to a lunch break. You can go to the next slide, please. Yay, lunch. But we are going to sadly have to only take 20 minutes instead of 30, if you're feeling okay with that, because what we'd like to do is invite you to bring your lunch back with you. We know it's a quick turnaround, but we do very much encourage you to take a break. We've been online together a long time, and I'm sure you're feeling a little exhausted. So we're going to take a 20-minute lunch break. Please, please, please do not leave the Zoom call. Just leave it on. We are going to share the Monterey Bay Aquarium jellyfish tanks with you, and it's quite lovely to watch. So you can watch them while you eat lunch if you wish. But we do hope you get up and walk around, stretch, go outside, get a little sunshine, get your eyes off the screens and take a deep breath. We will come back to the main room when we start. And so just you'll just come back into the main room, and then we will move ahead with putting you back into the same breakout groups. So we'll just pause for a second. Are there any questions that we can help anyone with at this time? James, if you want to take us back to the full screen so we can see everybody. Again, I would just emphasize this is brainstorming that we're doing together, and we will have additional opportunities to talk. We know we went quickly through some of this, and you can, hopefully you're beginning to see there's really intriguing stakeholder feedback that we all need to be talking about together. So thank you again so much for your conversation and what you shared with us. Any questions? Mary, is your hand up? No? Okay. Like Mary has a question. Yay. No. Anybody else? We good? All right, my friends. We would like you to not turn your computers off or leave the Zoom, but please step away. You can close your camera. You can turn your sound off. And do come back. Let's do a time check. It's 1:10, I'm going to say. So please come back at 1:30, 1:31. We will start right up. And do feel free to bring your lunch back with you if you would like. And we'll see you soon. Have a good break. So James, yes, full screen, James. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a opportunity to stretch your legs, grab some lunch. Please do feel welcome to bring lunch back. It was a quick
Amy,
lunch break.
Before you dive in, we need to have the chair gavel us back into general session and then reset again.
Let's do that. Tina?
I now reconvene general session.
Thank you. Is that does it, right?
That'll do it. And as soon as we get ready to break out, she'll recess it again.
I see. Okay, perfect. And we'll just give it a second here to help everyone come back. James, I just want to check with you. Are you ready to put us back into our groups? These are our groups.
Yes, I am ready to put everyone back into their groups, and some who have joined are going to be in the proper groups that they have been assigned.
Excellent. Thank you for taking care of that for us. Remember, everyone, we're coming back into our same groups. New members who are joining us, new participants, welcome to this session. And with that, let's remember we will now be focusing on questions 7 and 8. We'll be looking at areas of commission policy that need to be updated and what new policy, if any, should be taken up by the commission. So James, why don't you go ahead and send us to our breakout rooms? Thank you.
I now recess the general session so that commissioners, staff, and members of the public can participate in breakout sessions.
Okay, and just as a reminder, you will have 60 minutes in your breakout rooms with 1 minute to come back to the main room, and I will open those rooms now.
Okay, are we all back?
You can go ahead and I think, let's see. Do we have a quorum?
Do we?
You can reconvene the general session. Maybe we can take roll just to make sure we do have a quorum.
All right.
I just
now
noted that we
reconvene.
do. I'm sorry. Go
We
ahead.
do have one. Did you?
Yes, we do have
So
a quorum.
Thank you. All right, then. I now reconvene the general session.
Great. Thank you so much. And welcome back to the general session, everyone, and to the main room. And we are going to repeat our process of sharing our discussions and our thinking together. So let's get started. We will follow the same process. We'll start with group 1 and go to 2 and 3, and then we'll add as we go. Each group will have 5 minutes. So Cheryl Hickey,
Yes,
you want to tell us who's going to report out for you?
sure. We re-elected Terry Jackson.
Excellent. Terry, the floor is yours.
Yes, and I'm starting with the question 7, but I need to do question 8 also. So I just want to. So in question 7, what policies needed to be updated. We saw the social justice, racial justice lens throughout, making sure that whatever we do in our commission work, that we utilize that lens. We saw throughout, the need to, diversify the profession, but equally as much, self-care for educators, starting with preparation, and also thinking about as participants go through their preparation and beyond, making that clear that the profession is demanding and that it's important that they take care of themselves and their well-being. And then also, let's see, I'm trying to, yes. We saw also, this has popped up in terms of differentiating between the bigger institutions and the fact that they have resources and the means to go through the accreditation process and everything, and how that's different for a smaller institution, and being aware of that. And then just the ways that we can think about outside of the box and not necessarily doing things the way that we've always done. And we had questions on the side you can see for consideration, like, are there research are there research opportunities to learn about, and especially with parent communication and engagement, we saw that it's very strong for special education, but general ed, maybe that's an area to look at so that participants are really prepared to engage with parents and guardians, sorry. And also we talked about, just changes in terms of, policy conversations versus like human conversations, kind of like, we know that there's policy there, but, putting that human aspect on it and looking at policy through those lenses could be something that we consider. Now, question 8.
Again, question 8 about policy, new policy.
Yes, and this is what to consider for policy now. And again, just right off the bat, we noticed that diversity, equity, inclusion was a key emphasis in terms of policy that the commission could take up. And then again, self-care came up again. Also looking at, if you go down more, we had a really rich discussion on 8. Just looking at a true like continuum of practice, starting with pre-service and going all the way, even considering what can happen after the 2 years of induction are over and how that could mesh with the school side, the LEAs, and what they're emphasizing. Also go down, see. Yeah, I think those are good highlights. And then again, the parent and family engagement piece was in there. And just some questions we threw out: what career ladders are possible besides becoming an administrator? We now know we could probably think about, staying connected with the classroom with students and what other roles educators can play.
30 seconds.
Yes. And then just science, because this year has been very challenging, and we need to revisit how important that is.
I would like to draw a big circle around that one myself. Thank you for bringing that to the forefront and bringing our attention to that. Well done. All right. Anyone from your team want to add anything else before we move to team 2? All right, let's go ahead with team 2. We're going to start with Johanna.
Great, thanks. Hi, everybody. So Terry already eloquently mentioned a number of things that came up in our group as well. I will say one conversation that we had based on the issues about teacher wellness and mental health, that led us to a discussion of the importance of retention as a focus of the commission and of the state. And that was something that we know can come up in so many different ways, that even in the best of times, there's heavy burdens on not just teachers, but on everybody who works in schools. And now the burdens are very heavy. And so we talked a lot about retention and how that's such a very important part of trying to keep a strong workforce. There were a few comments about some areas where it was, either was surprising that there weren't more questions or comments about them, or areas that we should just make sure we're paying attention to. Comment about that there were very few questions actually directly about clinical practice, even though that's so important. A comment about it would be great if there were some more looking at alternative curriculum schools and what are pathways to open up so that new teachers know how to get into those types of schools. And also a comment about that there's very little about charter schools and our relationship to them, and what how we get information from them and are included in the conversation, that just was not that much part of these comments. We had a discussion about the comments about early childhood education and what are the different ways in which we can support early childhood educators attempting to create more equity in their circumstances and more support through the credential or other possibilities. And then a very interesting thought from Marquita, who I know has had to step off, thinking about how could we focus on not just the idea of drawing more teachers of color into the system, but really thinking about how do we support teachers of color throughout the entire arc of a career. Again, going back to this idea of retention being so important as well. Then some interesting comments about why is it that we don't see more discussion of socioeconomic status and poverty directly. Instead, there were comments about that sometimes it is conflated with being a person of color, and that it's that's an important thing for us to be considering, as whether we are considering SES fully as part of our DEI lens. And I think that covered most of the other comments that we had. Anybody else want to jump in there? Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Janie to talk about 8. Thanks.
Thank you.
You're muted.
So Janie, while you find your unmute button, we're going to move along here. We do need to keep to our promise of public comment coming up.
There she is.
There you are. Go ahead, Janie.
Yeah. So Johanna did an excellent job of bringing them all together, but I do want to consider in terms of new policy. I think one thing that really came out in our discussion that struck out for me, and the group can add to this, is the idea that Marquita brought up about having a collaborative group that's not CTA staff and commissioners, but also board, where we are often constrained by our task, and that maybe we would be well served by having a more collaborative experience with each other, so we could share policies and goals and concerns that we have. So an interagency collaborative working group was an idea that was really brought up that we spent a lot of time talking about. Really the idea of building relationships and how that improves in many ways, because mental health for teachers came up in our discussion, but
30 seconds.
Building relationships with the teachers and the community and the parent groups improves everybody's mental health. So developing community as a really important thing to bring into all discussions, policy and otherwise. So I don't know, what else did I leave out that we need to talk about with my 2 seconds left?
I'm just going to jump in with just one addition to what Jane was just saying about the collaborative. We had a very interesting discussion about, and jumping off of Iday's comment from before, about how could we work more closely with the State Board of Education. Yeah. There was a comment brought up, is it possible for us to have more of a formal seat at their table as they have a seat at our table? What are our restrictions and what are our opportunities for close policy collaboration for these huge issues that we're tackling?
Yeah, great. And that
go ahead, Janie.
One last comment. A lot. That was a really interesting idea for our group, and we spent a lot of time talking about that.
Mm-hmm. Well done. All right. Thank you, Group 2. And on to Group 3. Terry, want to introduce your reporter?
So for this afternoon's session, Bonnie is going to share Group 3's thinking.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And I will try to focus just on the things that haven't already been brought up. So we did have some really good conversation about the collaboration and communication between LEAs and prep programs, especially related to induction and teacher preparation. If we scroll down, you can see from the one column, we had a lot of really good discussion. So I think most of I'm looking now, most of the notes are in that first column. So I'll kind of look over there for a second. We had a lot of conversation too about the things that are within our purview and not. So I know like fees and how we're funded as a commission came up quite a bit, and our limitations around that. With the topic of micro-credentialing came up quite a bit too. And we did speak not just about the possibilities of using micro-credentialing to build on the base, but also how it could help the career ladder, possibly even maybe looking at it as a retention tool also. And I think if you scroll down, I think we actually in question 8, a lot of the things we were discussing in 7, we actually were realizing maybe we're better fitting more appropriately in question 8. So I think we have more there.
Okay.
All right.
Are you all set?
Okay, there we are.
You're gonna add, there you go.
I was waiting for the spinning to stop. Okay. So again, as I kind of alluded to earlier, we talked quite a bit about micro-credentialing and the idea that we saw a lot of comments around making teaching preparation more affordable, especially as it relates to our goals in wanting to diversify our candidates. And again, we wondered how much that we have the authority. We get grants, sometimes we have the 2-year grants, but those run out, and how we can make that more part of our core. We talked about the pipeline between both paraprofessional programs and community college programs, and perhaps ways we can pay attention to and develop those pipelines. Mm-hmm. So if you want to scroll down, or is that, okay, I was going to say, I thought there was more. Let's see. We talked a lot about because we are funded as an agency by test fees and credentialing fees, are there things within our control we can do to make things more attainable for people, especially early on in their careers? We spoke about sliding fee scales. I think Terry mentioned that at one point in time, your first credential was free and you paid to renew. So things like that might be within our control, but then we also have to balance that with we still need funding to operate. And so the kind of that balancing act there. As was mentioned in other groups, we did talk about the self-care, importance of self-care and teacher well-being. We talked about early childhood development and the master plan. There, again, it becomes a resource issue in some cases. And we also discussed the need to maybe really look at the TPAs and the passing rates and performance on TPAs, comparing them to standardized assessments to see what are the impacts of performance-based assessments compared to the standardized tests. If you can scroll down, I think I've already covered. Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Yes, please.
Just wanted to say you have 10 seconds.
Okay, thank you. And I actually think all of the things, if you keep scrolling, I think most of the things I've covered already. So I'll stop there.
Well, thank you so much. What a thorough presentation. And thank you all groups for being so dedicated to the work today. So very helpful. And we will bring this all back in front to discuss with you on Friday. We want to move along here to the next slide. We want to just talk a quick second here about Friday. We are going to come back and revisit our small and whole group analysis, all the good thinking we got done together today. We will bring that back on Friday. And we have a few questions we'll be taking a look at. I'll just let you read that on the screen for yourselves, mostly thinking about how do we prioritize all of these so important ideas and strategies and potential new policy areas. So we will also revisit our mission and vision and think about, most importantly, this last bullet, very important here for you to be thinking about over the next 24 hours or so until we get to Friday, which is what would you like deeper informational study sessions about as we move into the new year. So thank you for all of that. We'll be covering all that on Friday. Next slide, please.
Amy, are you thinking in terms of what we're supposed to be thinking about, like something like implications for the governor's master plan that just came out yesterday, that kind of thing? I just wanted to be sleeping on the right topics. Okay, thanks.
Yes, right now we're still pretty open. So all topics are open. But yes, that's a very good example. So thank you for giving us that example, Kate. And so let's go ahead to public comment, and I will turn it back to Tina.
Thank you. Thank you, Amy and Mary. That was such a good session today. We'll now open for public comment. Please email your requests to comments@ctc.ca.gov or call 916-322-6253 and indicate that you wish to speak on this item so we can call your name. Please make sure the request includes your full name, phone number, and and if you're participating through the phone only, make sure the name you provide matches the name used to join the meeting. The meeting host will change your permissions and ask you to turn on your camera and unmute your microphone to share your comment. At the conclusion of your comments, the meeting host will remove the permission in their camera and the microphone will be disabled. Recording secretary, are there any public comments?
Yes, there are. The first would be Danette Brown.
Hello, Danette.
Hi, friends. Danette Brown, and I'm speaking today on behalf of the California Teachers Association. And I'll keep my comments brief because that was a whole lot. So I just wanted to highlight, I love when, the universe brings things together, because some topics have been coming up in the field and with us through CTA and our friends at Student CTA. And I love when things intersect. So I just wanted to highlight a few topics that are really of high importance to us right now. And I can't say enough about DEI. That umbrella topic is huge for us right now in the field. We've been getting a lot of requests from teachers all along the continuum to learn more about implicit bias and how that impacts the profession. And we know that it's not a one-shot deal to learn about implicit bias. And wouldn't that be great if that was really called out more in preparation? So we look forward to conversations about that. Increasing diversity in the workforce is huge for us. And the last topic I wanted to bring up, because we see this as a related topic, was really evaluating our assessments that we have our teacher candidates go through. While we believe assessment of our teacher candidates is important, we don't want those assessments to be barriers. And we really need to not just look at the data, but take action based on the data and revisit some of those and see if they are in line with our goals. So I look forward to more conversations about this. It's good to see all of you. Thank you.
Recording secretary, are there additional public comments?
Yes, Harold Acord. Please state your name and affiliation for the record.
You can't speak. Hi, Harold. Now I think you can.
Finally let me. Thank you. At first it wasn't letting me. Hi, everybody. My name is Harold Acord, and I am representing the 300,000 plus members of the California Teachers Association, along with Danette. And I just want to reinforce what she had said around diversity, around testing, and all the other ways that we may be excluding people that we really need to be including in our profession. And it's been a really interesting day to look at the data to see what all of the organizations and stakeholders are feeling. And I think, like Jeanette said, a huge theme that's running through that is diversity, implicit bias. I see social justice and racial justice is really what is driving a lot of people right now. And I think it needs to be driving what we're doing. Also, we talked about socioeconomic status a lot. I heard a lot of commissioners speak about that, and that it's in the data too. As CTA, we just want to reinforce when we helped found the Commission on Teacher Credentialing, that your most important aspect as an entity is being an independent standards board, and we want to make sure to continue the focus on that and make sure that you are independent and that you are helping our profession keep up its standards and being a gateway into and out of our profession. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Harold and Danette, for joining us today. Are there additional public comments?
We do not have any additional requests. Thank you.
All right.
Great. Let's go to the next slide, please. So thank you so very much for participating. I'm going to turn it to Tina and Mary, but first, before we completely close, we have 3 minutes. We do want to point out that we do have a very brief evaluation tool that we would like to appeal to you to please fill out and get back to us. If you go to this bit.ly HTTPS site, you can do that for us and get it back to us quick so that we can see how we can better support all of you on Friday when we're back together. So James, you want to just speak about this real quick, and then we'll turn it back to Tina and Mary to close.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Amy. Yes, please complete this evaluation. It's 5 questions. It should take you no more than 5 minutes, but it is valuable information that will inform Friday's session. And just as a reminder, commissioners, you will be the ones completing the evaluation. This is for commissioners only. So just wanted to give that direction, and I will turn it back to Dr. Sloan to close us out with this meeting.
Thank you. Thank you, James. You were an excellent producer today. Everything ran tip-top smooth. And Mary, did you want to say anything?
I just want to say thank you to all of you for engaging in this innovative way of retreating and going deep on topics that matter a great deal. We don't get to do this often. The speed of work keeps us from having as much time as we might like to do reflection. And I am appreciating the project-based nature of this, the ability to look at how our stakeholders are responding to us, and to look deeply at that and to use that data to inform our next steps. So thank you for that, and looking forward to the next 2 days. I'm going to turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I would just like to acknowledge staff's efforts, which was tremendous in taking all of this raw data, figuring out how to code it, doing the coding, doing the summaries, figuring out how they could organize it so that we could actually engage in it, because they started out with 57 pages of comments. So there was no way we would have been able to do what we did today without that organization and the transparency of that coding. You have the raw data. Any of us can go back and look at that again. So I was especially pleased today with the ways in which I know in our small group was spectacular. I think the other two were probably as well. But this was just really, this was a great 4 hours for me. I can tell you that. So thank you, staff. And I hope the rest of you get a good afternoon and evening's rest before we see you again in the morning. All right.
Great, James. Maybe just bring us back to gallery. We can all wave goodbye and have a good afternoon to all of you. Bye.
Thank you. And I now recess the general session. See you tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. All right.